Some places do not exist on maps. They hide between forgotten memories and deep silences. They say that in the heart of an isolated forest, there's a valley where names vanish and time folds onto itself. Those who enter never leave the same, if they leave at all. Samuel Villar. An investigative journalist specializing in abandoned sites and regional folklore, Samuel never believed in hauntings, until now. Skeptical and methodical, he sees the valley legend as a chance to expose a mystery and boost his career. But as he enters the forest, he begins to fear the truth might cost him his own identity. Age, 34. Lucia Amaral. A botanist and folklore researcher, Lucia grew up hearing stories about the valley from her grandmother, who vanished mysteriously decades ago. Determined and intuitive, she believes the valley is more than a legend, it's a living entity. And she owes it something. Age, 29. Samuel had heard the stories before, but none of them had prepared him for the chill that ran down his spine when he saw the map. It was an old thing, the edges frayed and yellowed with time, but the place was unmistakable, the Valley of Silence. The same place Lucia had been obsessed with for years. The same place her grandmother had disappeared into decades ago. The forest surrounding it was said to consume those who entered. The trees whispered, the winds hummed with secrets, and the ground itself seemed to breathe. Lucia had found an old photograph of the valley. It had been her grandmother's. The image was distorted, blurred by time and something more sinister. She stared at it for hours, trying to decipher its hidden meaning. Samuel couldn't help but wonder if he was walking into a trap. But he didn't back down. They were going to find answers. At least, that's what he told himself. The air was thick with humidity as Samuel and Lucia trekked deeper into the woods. The further they went, the more the sunlight seemed to fade, as though the trees themselves were swallowing the light. Lucia led the way, her steps sure and quick, her eyes scanning the ground like she was searching for something Samuel couldn't see. He watched her carefully, noting how the forest seemed to affect her. Her pace quickened. Her breath became shallow. They reached the edge of a cliff, where the valley below stretched endlessly. There was no mistaking it now. They were here. "Are you sure about this?" Samuel asked. The silence pressed down on them, thick and heavy, as though the valley itself was waiting. Lucia didn't answer immediately. She just stared out over the valley, as if listening to something far away. It started with a whisper. Lucia looked up, her eyes wide with recognition. "It's here," she said, her voice strained. "I knew it would be here." Samuel turned toward her, confused. "What do you mean?" "The voice," Lucia whispered, pointing toward the valley. "It's the wind. It carries the voices of those who entered and never returned. The ones who forgot themselves." Samuel felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He'd heard stories like this before, tales of haunted places where the wind carried the memories of the lost. But he had never believed them. Until now. Suddenly, the whispering grew louder, and with it came the distinct feeling that someone, or something, was watching them from the shadows. They wandered deeper into the valley, drawn by an unseen force. Samuel's footsteps grew heavier, his breath short, as though the very air was pulling him down. He looked at Lucia, but she seemed undisturbed, as though this was where she belonged. They found the stone shortly after. It stood in the center of the valley, ancient and worn, covered in strange markings that Samuel couldn't decipher. Lucia approached it slowly, her fingers brushing against the surface. A tremor ran through her body, and she whispered something under her breath. Samuel watched, uneasy, as the stone seemed to pulse with life. It was then that he understood, this wasn't just a place of forgotten memories. It was a place that fed on them. That night, as they set up camp, Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The forest was too quiet, the air too still. Even the wind had stopped. Lucia was staring into the fire, her face illuminated by the flickering flames. She hadn't spoken much since they found the stone. She seemed distant, lost in thought. "Lucia," Samuel called, his voice tentative. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, in a voice that was not quite her own, she spoke. "They are here. They are all here." Her eyes locked onto his, wide and unblinking. And in that moment, Samuel felt the weight of the valley settle over him like a suffocating fog. He knew that the valley was calling to them, not just them, but everyone who had ever entered. Night fell quickly, as if the sky itself had forgotten time. Inside the valley's depths, Samuel began to see shapes in the flickering light, fleeting silhouettes of figures that didn't quite belong to him. As he sat by the dwindling campfire, a sudden, inexplicable memory flooded his mind, images of a childhood he never experienced, of a home he never knew. The sensation was both vivid and alien, tinged with an aching sorrow. Lucia, though silent throughout, seemed to sense these intrusions. Her eyes shone with a distant understanding, as though she had witnessed countless memories being sown and reaped by the valley. "The valley harvests the forgotten," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the unsettling hush. She recalled whispers of old legends, tales of those whose lives had been erased, leaving only echoes behind. Samuel's recorder, which he had clutched tightly, now lay useless in his hand, its digital screen flickering with static, as if it, too, had been invaded by memories not its own. Each heartbeat reverberated in his ears like an echo from a past not truly his. It was as though the land had begun to erase the boundaries between who they were and who they once had been. The forest, heavy with the weight of shared histories, pressed around him as the inexplicable intrusion continued in the quiet dark. Deep within the valley, they discovered a peculiar stone nestled among dense undergrowth. Its surface, slick with a ghostly layer of pale moss, gleamed under the moon's pale light. When Samuel's hand grazed its cool surface, an eerie note burst forth, a single, dissonant sound that resonated deep within his skull. He staggered backward, overcome by a mingling of awe and revulsion. Lucia stepped forward without hesitation, her eyes fixed on the stone as if it held long-forgotten answers. "This stone sings for those who have been taken," she explained, her tone both reverent and sorrowful. The sound lingered, a mournful note, as if echoing the cries of lost souls. It was not merely a sound but a message, a call from the past. For a moment, Samuel's rational mind battled against the surreal reality before him. The note, vibrating through his entire being, seemed to imprint a sense of irreversible loss into his consciousness. Lucia's connection to the stone was palpable, she even reached out and pressed her fingertips against it, her expression contorting as if sharing in a pain centuries old. In that moment, the stone revealed its secret. It was not just a relic of the past but an active participant in the valley's endless cycle of memory and erasure. Their journey led them to an ancient archway carved from weathered stone, draped in mysterious symbols and markings. At the center of the arch lay an inscription, a name written in an archaic language neither fully understood by Samuel nor by Lucia. As he attempted to capture the inscription with his camera, all his devices faltered. The images came out blurred, and the recordings distorted, as if the valley conspired to protect its secrets. Lucia stood transfixed, a tremor passing over her features as she studied the inscription. "This is the name," she whispered, "the name that must never be spoken aloud." When she spoke further, her voice quivered with both fear and reverence. The name seemed to reverberate within the canyon walls, summoning long-dormant memories hidden deep within their souls. Samuel felt as if the very sound of that forbidden name was etched into his bones, a silent command that stirred doubts about his own identity. Every fiber of his being vibrated with the silent song of that impossible word, urging him to remember what had been lost. In that charged moment, they both understood, the valley was not simply a place, but a living anthology of forgotten names and forsaken histories, demanding to be recalled yet feared. In the chill pre-dawn, the valley revealed another unsettling secret. While the darkness still ruled, Lucia suddenly jolted awake, her eyes wide with terror. Samuel, scrambling to turn on the lantern, caught a glimpse of a formless shape drifting between the gnarled trees, a presence composed of shadow and fragmented whispers. It was not a ghost in the traditional sense, rather, it was an accumulation of lost memories, taking the vague shape of a person with no distinct features. Its silent form glided closer, its surface rippling with the echoes of 1,000 unheard voices murmuring, "Return, return." The entity exuded an aura of deep melancholy and ancient longing. Frozen by dread and curiosity in equal measure, they could only watch as the figure moved with impossible grace. It did not come to attack but to observe, as if searching for a missing piece amid the ruins of time. Lucia's whisper broke the silence, "It walks with us, even if we do not see it." Samuel realized then that the entity was an integral part of the valley, a sentinel of all that had been forgotten, and perhaps, a warning of what might come. At sunrise, as the valley bathed in a hesitant glow, Samuel examined the footprints left in the dewy earth. Their own impressions were clear and measured, yet there was a third set, larger and deeper, with elongated digits resembling claws. This additional imprint, lying silently between theirs, unsettled him profoundly. "How long have these been here?" Samuel asked, more to himself than to Lucia. She stared at the prints with a mix of resignation and grim understanding. "It has always been with you," she murmured. "The valley walks beside all who enter, it reveals itself only when it chooses." The realization sank in slowly, something unseen had accompanied them from the moment they set foot into the silent expanse. More than mere tracks, the prints were a testament to an ever-present watcher, a force both protective and predatory. And then, as the breeze stirred the fallen leaves, Samuel heard his name softly carried on the wind, a desperate plea from the darkness, asking him to surrender his identity. The valley's silent presence was now unmistakably among them, and its grip, inexorable. Samuel awoke drenched in sweat, disoriented by a silence that felt both eerie and oppressive. When he stepped out of the tent into the cold pre-dawn darkness, he realized with mounting dread that Lucia was nowhere to be seen. The forest, usually alive with nocturnal whispers, now held its breath. Every step Samuel took echoed unnaturally, as if the valley itself were murmuring forgotten secrets. A sudden, disembodied voice began to resonate, not from around him but within him. At first, it was a faint murmur, a low cadence threading through his thoughts, "You have always been here." Samuel's pulse quickened as the internal whisper recited fragments of memories he did not recall, scenes of lost childhood laughter, voices of people long gone. Was it merely an echo of his subconscious, or was the valley reaching into his mind once again? With trembling hands, he fumbled for his recorder, desperate to capture the sound, yet all devices fell silent. The voice deepened, punctuating the heavy stillness with lines that blurred the boundary between his fears and the ancient presence of the land. In that moment, Samuel realized that the valley was not only erasing his sense of time and space, it was embedding itself within his very essence. As Samuel ventured further through a dense thicket, he noticed a sudden, almost imperceptible mark on his neck, a thin, dark line that pulsed with a cold rhythm. It was as if the valley had branded him, a scar formed not by injury but by an unnatural connection. His fingers traced the mark, each touch sending shivers down his spine. Lucia eventually reappeared, her eyes distant and filled with both sorrow and resigned acceptance. She confessed in a hushed tone that the valley had left its mark on her as well, a permanent reminder of a covenant forged long ago. "It shows us what we are, and what we have always been, echoes of those who ventured here before," she whispered. Her voice overlapped with the rustling of the trees and the distant hum of an unseen, internal engine. The scar on Samuel's neck, an emblem of the valley's claim, transformed from a mere physical trace into a symbol of the intertwined fates that the mysterious land imposed upon its visitors. It was a constant reminder that in this place, individual identities were at risk of dissolving into the collective memory of the ancient earth. Winding along a narrow, overgrown path, Samuel and Lucia stumbled upon a vast, black stone wall that stretched into infinity. Its surface was unnervingly smooth, a natural mirror that reflected not only their images but also hinted at hidden depths. As Samuel approached and peered into the glossy expanse, he was startled to see a version of himself that appeared broken and weary, surrounded by countless shadowy figures. Lucia stepped closer and pressed a trembling hand against the stone. The reflection of her delicate features rippled, and for an instant, her eyes mirrored lifetimes of sorrow and unspoken lore. "This is the mirror of memories," she murmured. "It holds our past, the fragments the valley has stolen, the faces we once were." The stone seemed to shift imperceptibly, as if hungry for more than mere images. Samuel could almost hear the soft, echoing voices trapped within its surface, a cacophony of lives that had been absorbed by the valley's endless appetite. In that surreal moment, both felt the unnerving truth: the valley did not simply claim space, it claimed souls, preserving them in reflections that whispered reminders of forgotten identities. Their journey eventually led them to a vast clearing, a natural amphitheater where ancient trees bent inward as if in prayer or mourning. At the center of the clearing lay a colossal crevice in the earth, its edges shrouded in darkness. From deep within came the steady, almost imperceptible sound of a heartbeat, a rhythmic pulse that resonated with the very core of the world. Compelled by a mix of awe and trepidation, Samuel drew near the chasm. Lucia, her face etched with both fear and determination, watched silently as he peered into the abyss. In the dim light, he could make out the scattered remnants of bones, half buried in layers of sediment, arranged in a manner that suggested a macabre sort of ritual. It was as if the valley was offering a silent eulogy to everyone it had consumed over the ages. Lucia's voice trembled as she spoke, "This is where it sleeps, the guardian of all lost names. It waits for us, for the ones who dare to remember." The sound of the heartbeat grew louder, reverberating like a mournful drum that synchronized with their own rapid pulses. Standing at the edge of that profound darkness, both wondered if crossing that threshold would seal their fate, or perhaps liberate them from the valley's eternal curse. In the wake of their unsettling discoveries, Samuel and Lucia found themselves face to face with the legend of the valley, the forbidden name. They discovered an archaic inscription etched deeply into a crumbling stone archway. The characters were mysterious and undecipherable, yet Lucia's eyes glimmered with a forbidden understanding. "This is the name," she whispered, "the very essence of the valley that must never be spoken aloud." As Samuel attempted to record the inscription, all his equipment faltered once more. The valley's power rendered modern devices mute, as if determined to protect its secret. In that moment, the syllables danced at the edge of Samuel's awareness, vibrating through his bones, urging him to recall memories he never knew were lost. The sound of the forbidden name was like an incantation, binding him to the ancient force that governed this land. Lucia's expression was pained, as if she bore the heavy burden of countless ages. "It is the lost name of all who wander here, the name of those whose memories have been devoured by the silence," she intoned. For a long, agonizing moment, both Samuel and Lucia experienced a fusion of identities, merging with the myriad souls captured by the valley. They understood then that the loss of a name was the loss of self, and that the valley, ever hungry, would continue its relentless feast on forgotten identities. The tremors subsided as if the valley itself were holding its breath. In the very center of the clearing, where the earth had split open in a dark chasm, a structure began to emerge, a door made not of wood or stone but of interwoven roots and brittle, ancient bone. There was no handle, no obvious latch, it simply existed, pulsating with a life of its own. Lucia stepped toward it, murmuring words that Samuel could neither hear nor understand, as if reciting a forgotten incantation. The door responded with a subtle, almost imperceptible click, a sound that resonated like the snap of brittle branches. For a moment, it shuddered as if awakening from a slumber, its surface rippling with the unmistakable pulse of living flesh. Samuel felt that undeniable pull, an urge to cross over, to discover if life lay beyond the threshold or if it was merely another layer of the valley's relentless hunger. But before he could resolve his inner conflict, a voice, soft yet insistent, and eerily familiar, whispered from behind the door. "I have always been waiting on the other side." Lucia's eyes glazed as she moved closer to the door, her steps measured and resolute. Samuel reached out to hold her arm, desperate to anchor her to the world he knew. But her touch was cool, detached, as if she had long ceased to belong entirely to this mortal realm. "You once walked through here, didn't you?" she said in a low, almost haunted tone. "You remember, I know you do, a lifetime before today." Samuel's mind whirled with echoes of fragmented memories that did not seem his own. In those moments, the valley revealed its cruel secret. It was a cyclic force, drawing back those who had already ventured within its depths. Both of them were bound by memories that transcended linear time, echoes of past crossings repeating endlessly. "Then shall we cross together?" Samuel asked hesitantly, knowing that to do so would mean surrendering the very essence of who they were. The door pulsed again, its presence both beckoning and foreboding. In that suspended moment, the choice was clear: to step over into the unknown, abandoning everything that tethered them to a familiar life, or to remain and risk being slowly consumed by the valley's silence. Hand in hand, they stepped forward. The moment their fingers touched the threshold of the formless door, reality around them began to unravel. The world was no longer a linear path of light and shadow but a shifting tapestry of memory and dream. Time folded upon itself, and images burst before their eyes, a montage of lives once lived, faces blurred by the inexorable march of forgotten moments. Samuel saw himself as a child, laughing in a sunlit meadow that no longer existed. Lucia watched as visions of her grandmother dancing beneath a starlit sky filled her mind. The barrier between past and present dissolved, and in that chaotic interlude, the valley's hunger revealed its true nature. It craved identity, memories, and every fragment of existence left behind by its visitors. They did not so much walk as they did become part of the swirling vortex of recollections, a timeless crossing where pain, longing, and beauty merged. Their hearts pounded in unison, a steady, somber drum marking the passage from the familiar to a realm where every step was at once a birth and a death. And then, as suddenly as it began, the journey ceased. They found themselves standing in a space that was both void and full, suspended between memory and oblivion. Long after Samuel and Lucia vanished from the edge of the clearing, time drifted on. Years later, a small team of explorers stumbled upon a battered recording device, half buried beneath a tangle of vines and moss on the outskirts of the valley. Its casing was scarred by the elements, yet it miraculously still functioned. Curiosity overcame their caution as they listened. The recording was sparse, almost entirely consumed by static, until a voice emerged, distorted, mournful, yet hauntingly clear. "If you are listening, do not search for it. The valley is no mere place, it is the echo of our forgotten selves. It awaits those who have lost their way. And when you forget who you are, it will remember for you." The message ended with a pause, an unfathomable silence, and then, amid the static, a single word was whispered by a gentle, feminine timbre. "Elon." It was as if the valley had left one final signature, a reminder that even in its relentless appetite for memory, it preserved a sliver of truth for those willing to listen. Though the figures of Samuel and Lucia faded into legend, the valley remained, a living enigma hidden deep within the forest. Over time, the land healed its visible wounds, and nature reclaimed the scars of its tormented past. Yet, if one listened closely, subtle signs persisted in the rustle of the leaves and the murmur of the wind. Travelers and wanderers spoke in hushed tones of hearing their own names carried on the breeze, of dreams that felt too real, of glimpses into a world where time and memory lost all meaning. The valley had become more than a destination, it was a state of being, a secret kept in the silence of an ancient earth that never truly forgot. And so, with every cycle of dusk and dawn, the valley exhaled softly, its heart beating in quiet, eternal rhythm. It awaited the next lost soul, a new story to be added to its countless chronicles. For the Valley of Silence was not merely a place on a map but a living repository of all that has been forgotten and all that is yet to be remembered.